Thank you very much. May I start by thanking the Center for Strategic Studies and the President of Azerbaijan Republic for organizing this interesting event and for having me. It's a great honor and it's a great pleasure to be back in Baku, a town that I love wholeheartedly. May I also extend the warmest greetings and best wishes on behalf of the Georgian Foundation for Strategic and International Studies and my own behalf on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of your independence. And I'm saying this as a person coming from a country whose history and historical fate is directly closely intertwined with yours, and moreover, I would say, interdependent. In 1918, we declared our independence together, actually in the same place, in Tbilisi. And we embarked on building our own national states after a long interval of being deprived of freedom and independence. And when in 1920, Azerbaijani Republic fell as a result of the Bolshevik invasion, soon, in a very short few months, Georgia fell as well. And we saw for the first time how directly our histories are connected. Then, after 70 years of Soviet rule, we declared the restoration of our independence in 1991, which followed the bloody repression from Soviet troops, massacre in 1989, April 9th in Tbilisi, and the Baku massacre of 1990. But again, instead of embarking on building prosperous, stable, democratic nationhoods, we had to literally fight for our very survival, because from the outset we had to cope with separatist movements that were instigated from the same place. So one thing that I have to emphasize is that we both were lucky as well, because we at the very early stage understood, and this is where I would like to also pay tribute to your great late leader Heydar Aliyev. We understood that only together we could consolidate our independence. And moreover, that small states like ours can only survive and flourish if we regain international political and economic function. And this is what we embarked on doing in the early 90s. Obviously, I am talking about the historic projects that connected Azerbaijani energy resources to the world markets. And it was far beyond just an economic project. And I remember well how this project was met internationally. And I heard today words of criticism towards the Western partners and the United States. But I would like to recall, because I was part of this process, I was fortunate to be a Georgian diplomat at the time, participating in these negotiations on behalf of Georgia, that without the hands-on approach from the United States administration at the time, we alone, I mean Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey, would encounter much greater problems. And just to remind ourselves, this project was not at all welcome by Moscow. I don't know about Azerbaijan, but I know for a fact that my government at the time was receiving direct threats from Moscow in order not to engage in this project. And here lies our main problem, which is still the main detriment to our independence and stability. I would like to exchange pleasantries with my Russian colleagues. And I know the joke that our Iranian colleague has cited. And like him, I am both ambassador and the professor. But I also like to be as clear as possible when it comes to most fundamental principal issues. And the principal issue, in my view, is that Russia hasn't reconciled itself with the fact that its neighbors are now independent states. And in Kremlin, it is viewed that our gain is their loss. Well, this shouldn't be like this, in my view. I believe that Russia would be much better off with stable, prosperous, democratic neighbors. And I can compare this attitude to that of the European Union. We can criticize the European Union for not being extremely efficient in delivering this policy, but the Eastern Partnership actually is a policy which reflects EU's belief that it is interested in having stable neighborhood to the eastern borders. And EU has been actually investing in this policy. Again, whether it was very effective or not, it's a different matter. But for my own personal view, Russia also has its neighborhood policy, and it has exact opposite goals. And I cannot refrain from commenting on what I heard from Mr. Markov's remarks on Ukraine, who explained Russia's military occupation and continued aggression in Ukraine by someone else's conspiracy and design to take control of Ukraine. Well, in my view, we have completely different story there. And the crisis, and now let's leave alone my personal point of view, let's just put facts straight. Crisis in Ukraine started not with the Maidan revolution, but it started when a pro-Russian president, Yanukovych, was forced to reject a free trade deal with the European Union. What this signifies, in my view, and now I'm offering my interpretation of this, is that not only Russia completely rejects the idea of her neighbors forming alliances of their own choosing, such as NATO, but it is determined to prevent these countries, even its closest neighbor, historically deeply connected country, Ukraine, even under a pro-Russian leader, to increase the opportunities for greater economic ties with Europe. This did not in any way represent any security or economic threat to Russia. On the contrary, like I said, any country should be interested to have prosperous and stable neighbors. Free trade deal for Ukraine would actually increase Russia's economic opportunities in Ukraine, which until recently almost totally depended upon Russian energy supplies and many more. But again, this, in my view, confirms Russia's own design towards its neighborhood. Now, back to Azerbaijan. I already said that we both faced great challenges, but the wisdom and the vision of our leaders back in the 90s created a completely new reality. Azerbaijan has built its own new international function, Now it has become a provider of energy security to Europe and rest of the world. But again, I think we should not stop there. And I would like to wholeheartedly commend the policy and the vision of the current leadership, which is now determined to move Azerbaijan's international role to a whole new level through consolidating and increasing its economic infrastructure by looking east. And I would like to greet our participants from Central Asian countries, because again, our historical fates are connected. Until recently, all of our countries, especially in Central Asia, had been cooperating with Russia closer than with one another. And I fully, of course, I'm very much in support of these countries developing further economic and political ties with Russia. However, if these countries wish to increase their prosperity and indeed their independence, I think it's a high time for their efforts to be coordinated. And Azerbaijan is there for them as their Western gateway. And it's not just a territory. Through its wise policy, we already have designed for increased infrastructure. I would especially like to mention TANAP. If in the 90s our international function required American help and encouragement of Western companies to come and invest, today Azerbaijan itself is a major investor in its own infrastructure and indeed in the European infrastructure. And I think it would be much easier for our colleagues in Central Asia, including in Turkmenistan, to consider Western routes for their energy and transportation cooperation while the new infrastructure is being prepared and more or less brought to their door. So I would like to complete with mentioning my own experience. I should have said that I was fortunate to have witnessed the signing ceremony of the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan agreement in the Çırağan Palace in Istanbul in 1999. But I remember very distinctly that at the time, Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan project was described as a purely political design of the West and unrealistic. I would say, well, I remember someone saying, calling it a pipe dream. I think we have proved together that not only we were able to realize this project and look at Azerbaijan today, but I'm sure this experience will help Azerbaijan and its partners to go further and move its international role at the whole new level. And I wish Azerbaijan success in this endeavor. Thank you.